My Gavanan and well met, I am Arakia Galadirthin, the head of Divide and Conquer, and welcome to another modding tutorial video. Now I thought I'd continue on the series and in the modding tutorials and just give you all a brief, complete overview of how to do very basic things so that you can edit as much stuff as you will. And some people have asked other questions about modding, so I thought I would answer those questions. There's a lovely little view of Swanhaven, one of my towns from Anno 1404, wonderful game. But anyway, let's dive in. So last time we discussed the export descript unit and the export units, both listed at the top here. This is where every unit's stat is listed, as I've already covered, and export units is where every unit's name is covered. But I should like to finish off discussing the features of the export descript unit so you can learn more and you can know basically what everything's going to do. I'm not going to cover every line because a lot of it is useless and a lot of it you'll never edit. But there are other bits and pieces that will be useful for you to know what they do. So I'll cover those as well. This might involve a brief bit of information about the Battle Models model database. Now this file is notoriously difficult to handle. I know a lot of reasonably experienced modders actually who even to this day still can't edit this file very well, so it can take a lot of learning, so I'm not going to go into this one too much, but this is where every unit's model directory is stored, so the game will go to this file to then decide what a unit is going to look like in the game. But don't worry about that one too much, but we might have to touch on that with what I'm going to cover in this one. So primarily what we're going to do with this time is the export descript unit, but I may also begin talking about the export descript buildings, where all the buildings of the game are laid out, because there'll be things that you might want to tinker with in this one related to unit training times, unit replenishment times, and unit restrictions. So I'll cover the basics of the EDB, which is the shorthand EDB of this file if you ever see it listed. But let's start with the export descript unit. So the question that I was asked, so in the last video you've seen how to edit all of the stats, and I've covered essentially every stat that can be affected in the game. I've since been informed that the defense stat isn't just when new units are on the defense, it is purely a stat used to calculate melee. And when I say defense stat, I mean the middle of the three defense numbers. So the middle number is not just used when you're on the defensive, it is actually always taken into account whenever you're in melee. So a unit which only has a defense stat, if it has no armor and no shield, they are incredibly susceptible to arrows, because arrows ignore the defense stat. If what I've been told is said to be true, then arrows ignore the defense stat. So the berserkers, for example, Isengard's berserkers, they don't have an armor or a shield, they only have a defense skill. So in melee they've got a 12 defense or whatever it is, but when they're being shot by arrows they essentially have no armor. So that is where the defense skill comes into use. So a brief little touch up on that. But the things I shall cover now, the first thing, we'll start at the top again. This time will be related, I'll be talking a little bit more about how you make a unit look how you might want it to. So the first three things that you might notice are officer, 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 because I'll just work down the file and then we'll go from there. So this first one that says soldier, and here you can see it's dismounted Huskarls, and this is the Yorling Axeman again, the Rohirrim Axeman unit. Now the soldier line just is what the game decides how the unit will act, the animations they will use. So for example, if you've got a unit which has, let's say, a bow and arrow, but you give its soldier a unit which in the Battle Models database file throws a javelin, then you'll get the odd little error that your unit will have a bow and arrow, but he'll move into the javelin position to fire his bow and arrow. He'll still shoot an arrow and it will still go the distance of an arrow, but he'll shoot it like a javelin. So that's all the soldier line is for. If you're just doing minor tinkering you won't need to worry about it, but I'll just tell you what it is so you don't get confused. So essentially ignore the soldier line for now, and if you have a major query about that then feel free to message me here or Total War Center. But the first three you're going to deal with are most likely the officer, officer, officer. What's most important about these is that in Third Age Total War they're not used very much, and in quite a few mods actually they often take these out, but I really like officers so I've popped them in. The maximum number of officers that a unit can have is 3. Now the officers are the unit that you see on the left hand side of a battalion, and there will often be one man who looks like a normal officer and then 2 flag carriers. Or usually the other way around, actually there'll be a banner carrier and then there'll be 2 like officer looking men. And that's what these 3 officers for. They go in line order, so officer number 1 will be standing at the front and then the 2 behind will be in their order behind. Now these are not the type or the dictionary name of the unit, which I covered in the previous video. So if you don't understand any of these terms, I don't want to go over them again, so do watch the first video in this little series. These are the armor upgrade model line, which you can see just down here. And this is why the battle models database is used, because let's say, for example, that for the Yawling Axeman, what they've got here is they've got a Rohan Captain Early flag, which is the name of the Rohirrim flag carrier in the files. He doesn't have an export descript unit entry, so he won't have this big entry here. It goes all the way to the top. He won't have one of them. He will only have this name, Rohan Captain Early flag, and the only other place you'll find it is in the battle models database. But you shouldn't need the battle models database, so ideally I probably won't cover it. But that's just so that you know where the name is stored. That's where the name is stored. But the Rohan Captain Early flag is the banner carrier. In almost every faction, the first officer will be a banner carrier. The only time this doesn't happen is any stealthy or ranger style unit. They don't have banner carriers because a banner would give you away, so you don't have one. And I think there might be a faction which still doesn't have a banner carrier. No, Hummingbird covered everyone. So everyone should have a banner carrier unless they're a ranger style unit. The maximum number of officers you can have is 3. The smallest number you can have is none. You can completely remove them if you want. The game doesn't matter. If a unit is the captain or the general, they'll get their 3 officers, and then the captain will stand behind them as well. So they also give a little bit of protection to the captain from cavalry charges and things like that. But the other 2 officers, these can be absolutely any unit you want. So, for example, if I really wanted Yawling Axeman, the Rohirrim unit, to have Citadel Guard as their officer, I could do it. But all you have to do is, again, if you are editing the officer, so Yawling Axemen at the moment have the Banner Carrier and Dismounted Royal Guard, who are just Dismounted Royal Guard. But if I wanted to have something else, so let's say we wanted them to have Helmingus, then we find Helmingus in this one, because we know that's the name of them in game. Fortunately, their in-file name is the same as their in-game name. So as you may have seen, I double-click that one and then I press Control F and it stores it in the Find section. I go back to the Export to Script unit, click on here and find Helmingus. And there they are, that's the Helmingus category. And now the look of the units in battle is all decided by the armor upgrade model line. So when you first get Helmingus, they'll look like Rohirrim archers. And then they will upgrade to look like Rohirrim archers upgrade. Now, what they will actually look like revolves a lot more, and that's all modelling, which I unfortunately can't do at all. I know absolutely nothing about modelling, but I know how to get the modelling into the game. But these are how this unit will look in game. These will be unique to each unit, although sometimes they are shared if 2 units look the same. But so you want to take this entry. You can copy it, you can do what you like to it. We want to go back to our Yawling Axemen, who I know from this one do have an entry here, so you can find them there. And then you just simply copy over that, and then in the game they'll have a Helmingus as their officer. And he'll act exactly as a Helmingus should act, but do bear in mind that officers can't shoot arrows. They will always be melee, so don't put archers there. That was just an example, but don't put archers there because they'll never be able to shoot. So it's better to put a completely melee style unit such as these spearmen, and again I'm taking the armor upgrade model line and I'm copying it into the line that I want the officer to be. So that's how you change what the officer will look like. All you need is the name of the unit you want to be the officer in game, then you take their name within the brackets, then you search for that here and it will take you to the dictionary line, and then you take the first entry of the armor upgrade model, or if you prefer what their upgrade looks like, you take the second entry and then you paste that over the officer line, and that's what their officer will look like. But we want to go back to the Royal Guard because we don't want to change it. And now that brings me on to how the unit will actually look in game as well. So we're jumping back down to the armor upgrade models, and as you might have suggested, that is exactly how you change the look of a unit. So if I really wanted Yawling Axemen to look like Rohan Spearmen, I just take the Spearman line from there and I paste that over the Rohan Axemen line. The only downside to this, of course, is that the dismounted Huskarls are an axe and shield unit, and the Spearmen, again, are a spear unit. So in battle, they will have a spear, but they'll fight as if they have an axe and a shield. So if you are changing the look of a unit, then you've got to make sure that the right type of unit lines up with it. And that's how you can change what the unit looks like, but that is literally just changing an existing unit to look like another existing unit. If you want to actually edit a unit's look completely, you'll need to learn how to model, and I can't do that, I'm afraid. The other thing to talk about when you're talking about how a unit looks is the armor upgrade levels. Here you can see 2, 3, 4, Rohan Axeman, Rohan Axeman upgrade. Now 2, 3, 4, these are the levels of the blacksmith in the game. So the highest level I believe is 8, which is held by the dwarves. I may have lied. Let's find Erebor. Double check what their highest is. 7. 7 I believe is actually the highest. And that is Mithril. That's only available in Moria. Yeah, 7 seems to be the prevailing number there. So that will correspond to their actual smithing level. But if you want a unit to upgrade as many times as you want, then you can just add numbers onto the end of this. All the way up to, you can have 4 entries, which equates to 5 numbers, because number 2 here means that these units already begin with a blacksmithing level 2 armor level. So if you buy the first blacksmith, which I think is just called a leather worker, that will have no effect on the Yawling Axeman because they already have armor equivalent to the second tier of the blacksmith. And the blacksmith does just work exactly like that. There are 6 levels of the blacksmith, and then the dwarves get that extra 7th level in Moria only. So level 1 will give you level 1 armor, level 2 will give you 2, 3 will give you 3, 4, 4, etc. So the Yawling Axemen begin at armor level 2. And that's Rohan Axeman, that's armor level 2. Essentially you need a line underneath here for each gap in between the numbers. So as you can see there are 5 numbers, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4 gaps. So I would need to copy that, or copy if I wanted them to look like normal Axeman or the upgraded version, add a comma and a space and then add another entry. Then add a comma and a space and add another entry. If you don't have the corresponding number in this line to the number of gaps between the numbers in this line, the game will crash, it won't tell you why, and it's very frustrating. So you do have to keep that in mind. The other thing that you have to bear in mind is that whilst you may have allowed them to go up to armor level 6, you'll need to know what I'm going to tell you in the second half of this video to actually make Rohan get armor level 6 through their buildings. Because currently Rohan can only get 3 levels of a blacksmith, and then if they build the glittering caves in Helm's Deep, they'll be able to get a 4th level. And that's how they get to level 4. But normally Rohan's maximum is number 3, which is why there were only... no, that's relevant, sorry. So number 4 is only for the dwarves, only for the glittering caves and any unit that you train or then retrain in Helm's Deep. Then the levels above that, you'll need to unlock the higher level blacksmiths, and as I will show you in a moment, you do that through the export to script buildings. So that's how you change the look of a unit just using coding, which is essentially what all of this is. It's called slang is called coding, and that's how you change the armor upgrade levels as well. So if you want a unit to be able to upgrade from 1 to 5, you can do that by editing the files here. And note that there's no restriction or correlation unless you make a correlation between the unit's actual armor level and the armor level that it starts with. So if you really want to, you can make a unit which has, say, 15 armor, one of the highest going in the game, and start them off at armor upgrade level number 1, which won't really make sense and it will totally break immersion, but you can do it if you want to do it. That's entirely up to yourself. So that's the main things to talk about in the EDU. I'll talk about a few other little features just before we go into the export to script building. The other thing that I wanted to talk about, the other little stats that you might want to play around with if you are fiddling with your game. The first thing, if we're coming from the top again, are the mount effects line that you can see here. Now these ones are important because whatever number this is, -1, -3, -4, you can see here, but on the spearman you'll notice that it's +2, +1, and then -2 to wargs, which is Mount Light Wolf is the warg's name in the game files. But these features here, you can have 3 features. Horse, camel, elephant we've got here, but these can be any named horse you want. So if I wanted to, I could make Yawling Axeman really effective against one particular type of horse, because every horse, most horses have their own name. So whilst they're shared throughout the files, you'll notice that horses might look different, because obviously the cataphracts of Run look like cataphracts, and the Elven elite units have that plate mail running down their spine. And so obviously all the horses have a different entry. And you can put whichever entry you want here, but you can only use a maximum of 3. and then the number that will go with it will affect the unit when fighting against that type of mount. So the reason I think horses are so strong in Third Age Total War is mostly because, aside having a very heavy mass, which is irrelevant, just know that they do, they also, most units have a negative combat bonus against cavalry. You may have noticed when you're playing that the unit information scroll gives you a bit of information about what your unit is good against, what terrain it's good on, what terrain it's weak on, but it doesn't tell you if it has a negative. And essentially, if it doesn't mention that it has a bonus against a horse, a warg, an elephant, an oliphant, a great beast, if it doesn't mention a bonus, it means it generally has a negative effect. And that's what these three stats here. So when they're fighting against horses, their attack modifier, I think it's their attack modifier, I'm not 100% sure, but essentially their combat effectiveness is modified by a factor of -1, so they are made worse. And as you can see against wargs, camels, there's only 3 camels in the game. There's 2 actual camel units who are for Umbar and Harad. They're camel riders and camel archers, and they actually are camels, obviously. But then also do note that a warg is considered a camel in the game file. So wherever you see camel, it also means warg. So they have a -3 factor combat modifier against wargs, so they're very weak against wargs, and against elephants a -4. Now if we were to go to a pike unit, such as, we'll go to this one first, Imladris Guard. Have I spelt that completely wrong? Yes, I have. There we are. Second time's a charm. Imladris Guards, sorry, and we copy that and go in there. You'll notice that they have a +8 modifier against horses, which means they are absolute beasts against horses. +6 against camels or wargs, and a +5 against elephants. Now, elephants in the game are the elephants are Oliphants, Great Beasts of Mordor, the Balrog, Ents, and Sauron. They are all elephants, and they are the only elephants. So wherever it says elephant, you're good against essentially the 3 types of monsters: Sauron, the Balrog, and the Ents, and the actual Oliphants and the Great Beasts as well. And that's what that line there does. But let's go back to our Yawling Axeman, just so that we've got the same image. So that line there can affect how good or bad the unit is against certain horses, or just the 3 general categories, which are horse, camel, elephant. So you can edit those as you see fit. Now the next thing to talk about is this small number here, or this number here rather. This number affects the delay in milliseconds between a unit's attack. So it will swing its sword, and then there's an inherent delay that is coupled with its animation, which is a rather annoying little feature. But essentially some units will have a slower animation than others, and that delay is taken into account. And then after that delay, there'll then be another delay imposed on the unit in milliseconds, and that's what that number there is. So the lower that is to 0, the faster your unit will attack. So you can edit that accordingly. So that's another feature that you might want to mention. The next thing is this one here, stat primary attribute, and that is just what it says on the tin. It is a listing of all the attributes that this unit has when fighting in battle. Now, as you can probably guess, AP means armor piercing. But there are some other ones. I will list them all off. And they are, you can have armor piercing, which is AP. You can have body piercing, which Ron Seal does exactly what it says on the tin. That is BP. So you can have AP, BP, which is body piercing. You can have long_pike, which is always used if the unit is a pike, because it helps the game calculate things. You can have short pike, which I don't think is actually used anywhere, apart from possibly on the Dol Guldur pikes, because they actually have a short pike. I have no idea how these affect the game, and I've never read anywhere how they affect the game, but you do put them in if they have a short or a long pike, because there is something about them that helps. You can have prek, which is relative to javelins only, and prek means that they will throw their javelin then charge into battle. If they don't have the prek, then they will throw their javelins until they run out of javelins. They'll act like a normal archer style unit. But if they have prek and you tell them to attack a unit with their javelins, they'll throw their javelins then charge in, much like I believe the Triarii of Rome Total War fame. You can also have spear, which is recommended if a unit has a spear. You can also have light spear, again recommended if the unit has a smaller spear. And then finally the big one for spear or pikes is spear bonus _ something, and it can be any number between 2 or 12 as long as it's even. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 and 12. And that is literally just a bonus to the unit if it has a spear, and the bigger the number, the bigger the bonus. So pikes tend to be around 8 and 10, and spears are around 2, 4, and 6. And you can have, I'm fairly certain that you can have as many of these as you wish, although it might be restricted to 3, I'm not entirely certain. But as you can see there, this spear unit has a spear bonus of 4 in its stat primary attribute. But do make a note of those if you plan on making edits yourself, because they will help you change units from weak, mediocre units to really quite strong support style units. There's also command as well, which I don't think I have written in. I've got a file that I've made up over the years of being a. Oh no, indeed, because command goes in the normal attributes. Alright, ignore command. I won't cover that one in this one because you don't really need to edit things like command. So that's what the stat primary attribute will do. So we've covered that there. You can ignore the stat secondary unless if the unit has 2 weapons, the stat secondary is just their secondary weapon. It works exactly the same to the one above. It can have it can have attributes. It has the same features as the one above as seen in the video before, and it's only used if they have a secondary weapon. As you can imagine, if they're an archer, the stat primary is their arrow, their bow and arrow, and the stat secondary is their sword, and that's the only time those are used. The final thing that I will talk about in terms of stats, and then that will be the edu done and dusted, are the stat ground features just here and stat heat just above them. Now the stat heat is the modifier that the unit has when it's fighting in heat, and I believe a higher number is better. Yes. So if the unit has a higher number, it fights very well in the heat, and a lower number, it fights very poorly in the heat. So you can edit the stat heat number, although it is as we say. So the higher the number, the better the unit is in heat. I don't know the maximum number that you can go to with the stat heat feature. It's it's reasonably irrelevant in Third Age Total War, because the only area that is considered hot is the deep south, the regions of Harad. So most units, this will never ever come into play, because it doesn't have an alternative effect. If that number is very high, it doesn't make that unit worse in snow. It doesn't work like that. It just makes them better in the actual heat. And so high numbers are only really found with the Umbar, Khand and Harad factions. Now the stat ground. These are the 4 things that you read in the information scroll where it says terrain bonus and terrain malus. If it's set to 0, it has no effect. A minus number means they fight worse in certain terrain, and a plus number means they fight better in certain terrain. And the numbers in order are, this one is scrub, which is grassland, so any land that's grassland. The second one is sand, which again is only found in Harad, so very rarely used. Most units have a negative bonus in desert. The third one is forest, which as you can imagine is just trees. And then the final one is snow, which is used for essentially any mountainous region. So you can edit those to really give differentiation and variety to your units. So certain, like dwarves have very good snow one, but they're not very good in the desert, and they're average in forest and grassland, because the mountains is where they are really their strength. So you can edit those as well to really differentiate your units a little further. Alright, and that's the edu done and dusted. If you have any further questions about the edu, do feel free to post them in the comments. Do feel free to find us on Total War Center and ask there. But for now, I shall move on and give you the basics of the export descript building, which governs every building within the game. This is the file here. Again, I will show you the path to it. So if, this is where I have a shortcut to my link. But if I'm getting to Medieval 2, I have to go to Sega, Med 2, and then you'll find mods just there. You'll find the one that you want to go to. I do DAC. And then you head into data, and this is your data folder. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it, but you scroll right to the bottom again. It's in alphabetical order, and you find the export descript buildings. This one just here. And then you double click that to open it, and you will get this file. And this is how they are all listed. Now this file can be very tricky to read, and it's a lot of information to take in. So do take it in small stages. But the basics that I'm going to cover in this small little video are how to change a unit's recruitment time, how to change how to change their replenishment time, and how to remove any restrictions on the unit. So what you're going to have to get your head around first of all is that Medieval 2 Total War was based on a system where you have castles and cities. I'm sure you're all aware of that, but unfortunately there is an entry for almost every building twice. So if we want to go to a barracks, we go to the barracks, we find it. This is the standard barracks. The Mesoamerican barracks that you saw above is used for Mesoamerican factions and canned. So Vale of Anduin, Dunland, Enedwaith, and canned, they use the Mesoamerican barracks. But this is your standard barracks. And what you'll see here is you will see the Town Guard City. Now this is, you won't have to edit this at all, but I'm just making you aware that there are 2 entries for every level. So there's a Town Guard City, and then the Castle Barracks is the name of the castle line of barracks. So you find Castle Barracks, and you'll see that the first level is called a Garrison Quarters Castle. So you do have to just bear that in mind. But let's go back up to the barracks. And we'll run through a few things. So the barracks is where the barracks line is, and you can see from this line here it shows you all the levels of the barracks. You've got Town Guard at number 1, City Watch number 2, Militia Drill Square, and I think they're we only use the 3 in this game, so the last ones are all irrelevant. But again, you're going to be coming at this because you know the game, the file name in game. So from the data folder, you want to go to text again. Again, they're in alphabetical order, and you want to open the exportbuildings.txt. Now, if you make any changes to this file, you will need to delete the exportbuildingstext.strings.bin underneath. It might just be called the export_buildings, but you need to delete the bin file, not the text file. If you delete the text file, the game will crash, but you have to delete the bin file, and then it will regenerate it with your changes. So this is what the export buildings look like. Again, it's a very tricky file with a lot to read, so do take it in slow stages. But let's say, for example, that you want to edit the name. This file controls the name of a building and its description. So let's say we want to change the Dunedain encampment. Then, is it not called the Dunedain encampment? There it is, Dunedain encampment. Oh no, that's a terrible example because it doesn't have a duplicate. Let's change the town hall, sorry. Town hall is listed so many times. And there is no city hall. Town hall, there we are. We want to change the town hall. Oh, it's because it's not actually called a town hall anymore because I changed all the names to be more medieval, more Lord of the Rings. But you want to get the name of the building from in-game. So the name is always this first one, Town Hall, Northern European. That's the name. There will be 3 of these related to each culture. So Northern European governs all Northern European. So the first line is the name. Then underneath you see Town Hall, Northern European description. This is the long description of the building, which is the one that you will see when you right-click on a building to learn about it. You can edit that as you like. And then the final one is the short description, which I think is only used when you get the little message in the bottom left that tells you construction complete. You click on that and it will list all the buildings that were built that turn. And next to each building, I think it writes there the short description. But I don't think it's used anywhere else. So these are mildly irrelevant, to be honest. But if you want to change the name, you just change that to whatever you want, and that's it, job done. If you want to change the description, you change that to whatever you want, and that's it, job done. So that's all this file governs. It just changes the name and it changes the description. But most likely, as I've already covered, we are going to want to learn how to take away restrictions of units and take away the names of units. Take away the replenishment time, or change or increase the replenishment time as you wish. So you want to come back to your export descript unit. You want to know the name of the unit that you want to change. So let's take the Fountain Guard, because they have restrictions and they take a long time to train. So we want to make Fountain Guard available everywhere, and we want to make them take 1 turn before I can train them again. So I find Fountain Guard, I double click on the unit between the brackets as usual, I control F that so it saves it in the find section. I go back to the export descript unit and I find them. And the line I'm interested in this time is the type line. The type line is used to show the name of the unit in the export descript buildings, the EDB. So I take that whole line there and I control F that again. And then go back to the export descript buildings, and to make sure that you work in order, go to the very, very top. Click anywhere you want, and then find Gondor Minas Spearmen, and it will take me to Gondor Minas Spearmen. Terrible example because they come from a unique building. So let's change that. Sorry, ignore that because they come from a unique building. I completely forgot. Who doesn't come from a unique building? The Eastfold, not Eastfold. those Westfold cavalry, Riders of the Fold, yeah, they only come from small regions. So Riders of the Fold, they come from East or West Fold. So again, double click on the name between the brackets, Control F to save it in the find section. I go back to the export to script unit, click anywhere, find next, and there they are. And as I say, you're interested in the type line, so I take the Rohan Heavy Horse Archers and I Control F that, so it pops into my find box. I head back to the export to script building. I click anywhere because it doesn't matter this time. Oh no, for the sake of uniformity, scroll to the top, click there and find next. And here you go, this is their entry in the export to script buildings. This affects how they're trained and how many turns they'll take. So you want to make them take one turn and you want to make them available anywhere. Now the hidden resource will start at the back here. I know, deal with the numbers in a minute. But as you roll along the line, recruit pool, Rohan Heavy Horse Archers 0.1410 requires factions Milan. That obviously decides who gets to train the unit. I wouldn't suggest you tinker with that because if you change them to anyone else essentially, they will not look normal in the battle. They will be silver surfers. They'll have that bright silver hue. They won't look normal, so don't edit that. Just know that that's who can train the Milan or Rohan, so Milan can train them. Now they require region, religion, Northmen, and they require 50% Northmen to train. So if you want to make them available without a culture restriction, you just delete that. Now do keep in note that there are 2 spaces between the final bracket and there. I don't actually know if they're required, but there have always been 2 spaces, so just for sake of uniformity, keep the structure. Otherwise it looks even more messed up than it already does. If you are on Notepad++ and it looks a little different, it will be because the word wrap box is not selected. So if you come into the game and you notice that they will all extend out like that, you can word wrap them, which I find more useful. And essentially if a line goes beyond the edge of the box, it puts it underneath, which I think is more useful. You may not find that more useful, but the word wrap is how to take that feature away. But anyway, so we've removed the requirement of the Northmen, which was 50%. Underneath is a direct comparison to the one above, so you can see that. They require the hidden resource Rohan. Now this is where the restrictions come in. Hidden resources are exactly as the name would suggest, hidden resources. They go into the region file, which decides all the features of every single region in the game. It'll have an entry of every region in the game, and it will have a listing of all their hidden resources. So you don't see the hidden resources in game, but they are in the files and they're used for exactly this feature. So the hidden resource Rohan is a hidden resource in every region that is in Rohan. So that is the first checkpoint on them. They have to be in a Rohan region. And now secondly, they need another hidden resource, which is hidden C, because we use a special resource feature because there's a limited number of hidden resources. So we've reverted to the region and then hidden A through J, I believe. So to make these available absolutely anywhere, quite simply, you just delete all of that. And that's it. You could then save it and they will be trainable anywhere you want. No restriction whatsoever. And that's the same for any faction. Now obviously for immersion purposes it is very worthwhile at least keeping the religion requirement, because otherwise they'll be trainable immediately after you take that town, which is unrealistic. This at least gives you some sort of check suggesting that you've got to move your own population in first before you train your own men. So you'll likely, if a unit has no restriction, you will likely not see that anywhere. You will likely just see that with nothing afterwards. So that's how you remove any restriction whatsoever. They would just, if you delete everything after the bracket, they'll be available anywhere, they'll be available immediately, but it's worthwhile keeping the resource, the culture resource requirement. Now, the 4 numbers at the front, these decide 4 very special things about the faction. The first number will tell you how many are available upon building this barracks level. So at the minute we're in a knight's stables, which is the 2nd level of the castle stable battle building. So you get stables, knight stables, baron stables, and the Westfold riders are not available until the knight's stables. Here they are again. Let's pop a little thing next to 601. So they're only available in the knight stables. So if I would like this unit to be available in the barracks before, I can quite simply copy their entire entry. So both entries, because well, you won't need both entries if you're removing the hidden resource requirement, but So I'd take both of those entries, I would just quite simply copy them, which is Control C, or you can right click and actually click copy, but I have it on my mouse, so it's much easier for me. And then I go up to here. For uniformity's sake, I'd put them underneath the Milan entry, but you can put them anywhere you want. They're only separated into groupings just so it's easy to go straight to that factions units in this file. But I pop underneath Milan, just copy them, and then that's it. They would then be available in the first barracks level. And that's how easy it is to move them between barracks. But the reason I went to such detail at the beginning about 2 barracks lines is because if you did just that and you saved it, they'd be available in the castle first tier stables, and they'd not be available in the town first tier stables. To get them in the town first tier stables, you'd need to go to convert C. You'd need to get C_equestrian. Go to that entry, and then the first entry in that one, which will be C_stables, pop an entry in there as well, and then they'll be available in both first level entries. So that's how you can copy them to other buildings, and indeed you can put them in any building you want. So there's entries in this file for absolutely everything, every single building in the game, even down to the unique buildings such as the Tower of Icthelion or the Black Gate, or even the Palantir, they are all listed in here, so that you could put them in any building that you wanted. But back to the 4 numbers. So the first number will tell you how many are available when this building gets built. So immediately upon building this building, you will have none available. But if you change that to a 1, then regardless of how many were available before, as soon as you build this building, you'll be able to train 1 unit of Riders of the Fold. Now the second number is the replenishment number. This is the one you're all interested in. This number decides how long it takes them to replenish. So how long it takes them after training them once to be able to train them again. The number, if you divide, that number, the larger the number, the faster they are. But the way that you actually work it out is that you divide 1 by that number. So 1 divided by 0.14 is 7.1428571429. But so essentially that's roughly 7 turns between training. So another way of doing it is, if I wanted them to take, say, 50 turns, then you can take the number of turns that you want them to take and just divide that by 100. No, I've completely lied to you. I do know how to do this, but it always goes out of my mind. 0.2. Sorry, hold on. Let me just do a little calculation. Yes, yeah, no, I have got it. Because if that number is 1, then they will take 1 turn to replenish. But the smaller the number, the obviously further away from one you're getting to take to replenish. So a unit that has 0.1, for example, will take 10 turns. So to work out how many turns they're going to take, divide the number 1 by that number. So this number, as we've already discovered, this unit will take 7 turns to replenish, because 0.1 will take 10 turns and 0.2 will take 5 turns. So that is the replenishment number. If you want them to train really quickly, make that number very high. Now the next number is how many will be available in that settlement completely. So because obviously if that number is anything above 1, then if you don't train the unit after the replenishment time has passed, then they'll begin to pile up. But that's only if that number is higher than 1. So if that number were 20 and I never trained this unit in a town and I waited 140 turns, which would be 27s, then there would be 20 units of Rohan Heavy Horse Archers available. So that number is the maximum you will ever really see. That number is 3. So there's only ever really 3 available in a town if you haven't trained units for a while. So you can change that to have more of the units actually available if you're not training them as soon as they're available to you. And the final number is how much experience that unit will train with once it's trained. It can be anything from 1 to 9, and if it is 5, for example, then when you train that unit it will come out with a 5 experience level. So you can edit that number to make them have a higher experience when they are trained. And that is how you remove the replenishment, or edit the replenishment, and remove any restrictions to the unit. Again, if you have any further questions, do feel free to pop them in the comments. Do feel free to head to Total War Center and ask me there. That really covers all of the basic things that you will need to do. That's everything in the export to script unit that you might want to do, and that's everything in the export to script building that you'll likely want to do. If you have more niche comments, or there are a lot of comments, I might do a further video, but after this you're starting to get into more medium level knowledge, and it can be quite frustrating, and a video like this might not be the best way of teaching it. So that's all I do for this one. I hope it's been enjoyable. Do leave comments, do say what you think, do indeed ask questions if you have further questions. Make sure that you make a backup. That is always important. Always make a backup until you're incredibly confident that you're going to be able to do these things, but even then I still make backups even now, and I'm the mod leader of this mod, so always make backups. But for now, I hope it's been enjoyable. Head to Total War Center if you need to contact us. Do try and post in the forum rather than sending me a private message if it's just about crashes or things like that. I mean, I can understand your frustration if the game is crashing, but if I'm not speaking in the forum very much, it's just because I'm busy, so I'm unlikely to reply to your private message any faster than I would if you just posted in the forum. Also, have a read of the forum, because a lot of people's questions are answered there. But for now, I'm Arakir Garladurthan, the head of Divide and Conquer, and Navarna den Pedimad, and farewell.